Very sensitive man. Gentle, kind, funny at home, funny with the dogs, funny with the kids.
He was the Marx brother who never said a word, and yet everyone remembers him. Harpo Marx, the wild-eyed, curly-haired mime who caused chaos with a grin. But behind the laughter, he was a man few truly knew. Harpo wasn't always Harpo. He was born Adolf Marx, a name he quietly left behind, becoming Arthur in 1911. Growing up in turn-of-the-century New York, the Marx boys knew only poverty. Their tenement was cramped, noisy, and cold in the winter. But it was home. Their mother, Minnie, was a force of nature. Determined to lift her family out of hardship, she pushed her sons into show business from the moment they could speak. And like it or not, they performed. It wasn't a childhood filled with toys or games. It was filled with rehearsals, auditions, and long, crowded train rides between vaudeville gigs. Harpo was terrified the first time he stood on stage. So nervous, in fact, that he wet himself. Still, that moment, embarrassing as it was one of the bright spots of his childhood. School was far worse. As a Jewish boy in a rough neighborhood, he was relentlessly bullied. His classmates would literally toss him out a second-story window whenever the teacher left the room. Not once, regularly. One day after hitting the ground yet again, young Harpo simply got up, walked home, and never came back. He was just a child, but already making adult decisions to protect himself. With no education past the second grade, Harpo became a street kid. Slipping through alleyways, swiping trinkets, hanging out with rough boys in tough neighborhoods. He even played piano in a brothel, long before the harp ever entered his life. The city was dangerous, but it also gave Harpo something that school never did. A stage of sorts, and an audience. Then something shifted. The Marx Brothers began finding their voice, ironically just as Harpo was losing his. While their mother still insisted on a music act, the boys couldn't help but fool around during performances. What started as goofing off turned into genuine laughter from the audiences. Their act evolved into comedy, chaotic, energetic, unforgettable. They began developing their personas. Groucho, the sarcastic talker, Chico, the fake Italian piano man, and Harpo, the wild child. In this new identity, Harpo found something powerful. He could say more with a horn honk or a raised eyebrow than most people could say with a paragraph. Their first film, The Coconuts, hit the screen in 1929, and Harpo, he didn't say a word. Not because he couldn't, but because silence had become his secret weapon. He let the others talk while he caused mischief. His signature act? Pulling ridiculous objects out of his massive coat and staring wide-eyed into the camera. But silence wasn't always golden. When NBC gave the Marx Brothers their own radio show during the Great Depression, Groucho and Chico earned over $3,000 a week. Harpo, he was left out. Because how could a silent man do radio?
The Five-Star Theater presents Groucho and Chico Marx.
Still, his place in pop culture was sealed. The wild clown, the mute mischief maker. But few knew how close we came to having a very different Harpo. Originally, the brothers had imagined him as Patsy Brannigan, a freckled Irishman. The transformation to Harpo came at a card game. A friend, Art Fisher, named him Harpo because of the instrument he played. And just like that, a legend was born. Of course, because he was Harpo, he didn't learn the harp the normal way. He picked it up on a whim, taught himself everything, how to tune it, how to play it, how to make it sing. 3 years later, he realized he'd been tuning it wrong the entire time, but instead of shame, he turned it into style. Even professional harpists were amazed by his raw, unconventional brilliance. The family had only enough money for piano lessons for one child. They gave that to Chico. But Harpo, he simply listened in, soaking up everything like a sponge. Music, like comedy, was something he absorbed through instinct, not training, and somehow that made it even more powerful. Harpo's life was filled with strange little stories like that. He once lived next to legendary composer Sergei Rachmaninoff and got so annoyed by the constant practicing, he blasted one of Rachmaninoff's own pieces out the window over and over until the composer gave up and moved away. Mischief followed him, even into adulthood. He was a prankster through and through. In the 1930s, he showed up at a lavish costume party hosted by Marion Davies, the mistress of newspaper tycoon William Randolph Hearst, dressed as Kaiser Wilhelm, the infamous German emperor from World War I, not exactly a crowd pleaser. Harpo ended up hitchhiking home and was briefly arrested as a vagrant, but that was just another night in the life of Harpo Marx. Not all of Harpo's stories ended in laughter. After moving to Hollywood, he fell deeply in love. She was the kind of woman he could picture a life with. Quiet moments, children, something real. But the day before he planned to propose, tragedy struck. She died in a plane crash. He was shattered. For years afterward, Harpo avoided serious relationships, carrying that pain with him in silence, just as he had learned to do since childhood. Then, one night, everything changed. At a glamorous party hosted by producer Samuel Goldwyn, Harpo met Susan Fleming, a spirited young actress with bright eyes and a bold heart. And in a strange twist of fate, she shared the same last name as Harpo's lost love. Fleming was instantly smitten and wasn't shy about showing it. When Harpo hesitated, she did something unheard of in the 1930s. She proposed to him. Once, twice, 3 times. Each time Harpo turned her down. Not because he didn't care for her, but because he was afraid of losing someone again. It took time and patience, but on the 3rd proposal, Harpo finally said yes. They married in secret, but word travels fast in Hollywood. None other than President Franklin Roosevelt sent a public telegram congratulating the couple, and just like that, the secret was out. The pair began a quiet, happy life together. Susan gave up acting and they adopted 4 children. Harpo once joked, "I want so many kids that when we drive by a house, there can be one in every window waving to us."
Does he ever talk? Can't you get anything out of him?
Never have.
Try it, will you?
In 1933, Roosevelt named Harpo a goodwill ambassador to Soviet Russia, one of the most unlikely diplomats in history. On his journey, Harpo witnessed the rise of Nazi Germany firsthand. Passing through Hamburg, he saw early signs of what would become one of the darkest chapters in history, and he reportedly became physically ill. In the Soviet Union, the government didn't trust him. Who could blame them? A silent clown from Hollywood with a harp? They assigned him a personal spy who monitored his every move. But Harpo still found a way to make trouble. Good trouble. At the American embassy, behind closed doors, a U.S. official handed him a secret document and asked him to smuggle it out of the country. Harpo taped it to his leg and carried it home without a word. Not your typical clown. Even outside the spotlight, Harpo remained delightfully eccentric. He once let pianist Oscar Levant, a famously unstable, brilliant insomniac, live with him for over a year. No rent, no questions. That's just the kind of man he was. And croquet. Harpo loved croquet. So much in fact that he bribed a New York landlord to let him build a full croquet court on the roof of a parking garage. One time he even kept New York's governor Al Smith waiting on the phone just to watch his friend take one particularly difficult shot. But time, as always, catches up. In 1963, Harpo announced his retirement during a live performance. The audience didn't know they were witnessing history until he told them. Then something incredible happened. Harpo Marx spoke. For the first time in his adult life, he gave a public speech. It wasn't flashy or funny, it was heartfelt. The audience sat in stunned silence, listening to a man they had never truly heard until that moment. Harpo passed away on September 28, 1964, the exact day of his 28th wedding anniversary. Even in death, his timing was perfect. His funeral was a deeply emotional event. Groucho's son later said it was one of the only times he ever saw his father cry. And maybe that's the legacy of Harpo Marx. Not just the wild eyes and the horn, not just the chaos, but the silence. The strength it took to say so much without saying anything at all. If you enjoyed this story, give the video a like and subscribe for more old Hollywood stories that deserve to be remembered.